the so-called three suns have appeared in the sky, an unusual phenomenon that has surprised everyone. This solar phenomenon, Parhelion, also known as the Sundog or Parhelion, surprised thousands of people. This comes as people remember another phenomenon that also happened last year, 2024, when it was reported in China that 7 suns appeared. This visual phenomenon occurs when ice crystals in the atmosphere refract sunlight, creating these bright spots on both sides of the sun. The images and videos quickly go viral and always spark debates about what is happening. National Aeronautics and Space Administration says sundogs are more common in cold areas or when cirrus clouds are present, since these clouds contain the crystals needed to create the illusion. The same spokesperson from the United States Weather Service explained that sundogs appear when the sun is low on the horizon and there are clouds of ice crystals in the upper atmosphere. For example, this image was taken in Chihuahua. He just says that. This happened in Chihuahua. Take a look. Let's see if you can see the whole thing. There it is. Look. This also formed in Chihuahua. This happened in November of last year, right? This image is from Chihuahua. So let's say that the phenomenon doesn't necessarily mean you have to live in the Arctic, right? Or in Antarctica, but simply if the phenomenon or the sun is present on, let's say, on the horizon, and there are cirrus clouds, there are these clouds with these ice crystals, well, it can appear. These days, it's common for people to take pictures of this because there are more cell phones and cameras. Atmospheric phenomena that, well, are often captured by people, right? Simply, hey, speaking of phenomena, let's talk about another phenomenon, which is these hurricanes happening in the Atlantic, because this one, well, it's gaining a lot of strength. We're talking about it still being a Category 4. Look, this is the size of this phenomenon called Humberto, right? On the other hand, there's also, on this other side, the phenomenon, or the potential hurricane Imelda, which right now is a tropical storm. Imelda? Well, no. Up to now, at least, it hasn't been a hurricane, but it's very close to Florida. As you can see, in fact, it's possible that on the coast they may already be getting some rain clouds. For instance, Georgia is already seeing heavy rains from Imelda, as it's part of the same event. Even a good part of the east coast of the United States has reports of this situation. So, pay attention to these phenomena, which are very close to each other. Both Humberto and Imelda can be a problem, but you also know where. In this phenomenon, look, this phenomenon that's in Asia, called Bauloy. A phenomenon that was and is still affecting some regions of Asia, where they report that this typhoon has already left 12 people dead as it swept through parts of the coast of Vietnam. And that's even though it made landfall as a tropical storm? The meteorological event damaged infrastructure, caused power outages, and impacted thousands of homes. People were affected and evacuated in that region of the world. There are reports of victims in those areas, and several people are still missing. The heavy rains and strong winds from this typhoon, Bauloy, they have flooded roads, ripped off roofs, and caused at least 12 deaths. Well, it's also a terrible situation. And since we're talking about this, how many cold fronts are expected from Mexico, a bit of Central America, and the southern part of the United States? Well, look, just in this coming month, which we're about to enter, October, there will be 5 cold fronts that could affect the northern part of the country. But in general, the entire winter season will have about 48 cold fronts. That's what's being reported right now. The National Meteorological Service, under the National Water Commission, forecasts 48 frontal systems for the 2025-2026 cold front season. Are they going to affect you? During autumn and winter, it's slightly below average, so there will be fewer cold fronts. That doesn't mean there will be less cold, it just means there will be fewer fronts. Usually there are 50, but this time there will be fewer. The systems will occur between September and around May, but the strongest ones, well, you already know. In November, December, January, and February, those are the 4 months when the fronts come a little stronger. How is winter forecasted for the United States? Look, there's an alert that this winter is going to be extreme. Severe cold and snowstorms are expected in the United States for the 2025-2026 season. According to the report, although it won't be as extreme as other winters, it will still record temperatures in some places. According to what is reported in the Farmer's Almanac, they detail that the intensity of the cold and snow will not affect the southern states as much as it did last year. On the contrary, the cold will be more focused in the north, in the northern plains, New England, the Great Lakes region, all that area. It will be much colder, but less so in the south. This report highlights that winter could extend until March and even into April in the northern strip, especially New England. For example, in the Midwest and the Great Lakes, Ohio, Michigan, the whole area, the year will start with windy cold, snow in the north, and possible significant storms. Cool, wet weather is expected in Idaho, Oregon, and Washington in the northwest. In the north central region and Colorado, the almanac says there will be a classic winter wonderland. There will be heavy snowfall, which also draws attention. In Florida and the southeast, they will experience a wet, mild winter. In general, that's how it's going to be. However, Virginia and West Virginia could experience some winter precipitation and intense cold during the second week of January. Also, Texas and the south central region might possibly have a cold spell with chances of snow and freezing rain in northern Texas in January and February. According to the reports, we feel that some of these more northern areas could have freezing rain and cold weather, so it's worth having at least boots and antifreeze, as they say. In California and the Southwest, the winter is expected to have average temperatures and more precipitation than in previous years, so that's going to reduce the risk of wildfires. So that's good news, that it's wetter for California. That will also be important. The Farmer's Almanac, which is this Farmer's Almanac, they say they have their own formula and they're very accurate. I've already given you that report. I'll bring the United States Weather Service report later. And from the University of Colorado as well. They're like the three most important and most accurate ones there usually are. We'll keep analyzing it. Remember, a winter could be influenced by La Niña. And this could mean that in some places, especially in the north, it could be much colder than in other seasons. Let's move on. We'll return with more information soon.